Welcome to another episode of Women in Focus. Today we've got a very interesting young woman that we're going to be talking to. I've known her ever since she was a little girl, and I knew her mother very well. She owned a fashion boutique in Vancouver. She herself is in the legal profession. She is an arbitrator, a mediator, big words, and I'll ask her what all that means. Welcome, Gulnaaz Lalji, who is our Woman in Focus today. How are you doing, Gulnaaz?
Very good, thank you.
So, when I last met you, it was at a get-together, a political get-together. And I said, this young woman is interested in politics as well.
Absolutely.
Legal profession, politics go hand in hand, don't they?
For many of us, yes, absolutely. For me, I studied politics as an undergraduate and have always been very engaged, I would say, politically. My family emigrated to Canada when my mother was pregnant with me.
Oh, I see.
And so, and they came here under quite difficult circumstances.
Yes.
So they emigrated here from Uganda right before the political crisis.
Right.
And so everything I grew up around was politics and civil strife and community and the importance of being a part of a community. And so this is what I grew up in, and that's why we met where we did.
So you understand the trials and tribulations of refugees, of people who are immigrants, who come from places where there's a lot of strife, and people from Uganda, all the Somali community especially, you know, who emigrated to Canada, has worked really hard to be where they are today, and the same with your family as well.
Absolutely. I would say that immigrants and refugees by and large work extremely hard when they move to a new country. I don't think that that's singular to my own family or my own community. I think that whenever we see mass exodus of people, whether because of war or famine or other reasons, you know, shifting one's life to a new country, a new continent, new climate, new culture, new language, people do this because they have to.
Yep. And for their children. And
for their children, and for a better life. And so, absolutely, you know, I think that for my parents and for their parents, adapting to life in Canada was very difficult. My mother talks to me about how, you know, it was so cold here when they came, and she couldn't get used to it. And I think the first year or the year that I was born, we had this huge flood in our basement, and you know, nobody knew how to clean up floods because this didn't happen in Uganda. And but I think that, you know, everything from, I think with my parents, they had a bit of an advantage because English was their, you know, they were taught English in school. But I think for my grandparents, you know, you have to become more versant in English. You have to, you know, your accent, it gives away that you're a newcomer.
That's right. You mentioned your mom was pregnant with you, so you were born.
I was born here.
You were born. So you're a true Canadian then.
I'm a true Canadian with a bit of African
background to it. Yeah. So how many in the family?
We're 3 children. So I'm the eldest, and then I have 2 younger brothers.
Oh, wow. So an older sister who looks after her younger brothers, eh?
That's how it went in the early days. Now it's kind of the other way around. But
that's right. So Mom was always interested in fashion. And what made you go into the legal field?
So I would say that my dad was very keen. He was a huge, I mean, he was just amazing as a father.
Yes.
And so I guess I was the firstborn, I was his first daughter, and my father always instilled in me that I could do anything I wanted. And of course he wanted the best for me. He wanted me to, you know, get as strong an education as I could and be as independent and strong as I could, and then of course to enjoy the people around me. But I would say that very early on it was something that I considered. Not just considered, it was something I was leaning towards very early on. And I think, you know, they say these funny things about astrology, right? So my birth sign is a Libra. And so Mom would always say to me, oh, you're always arguing with me, you're always arguing with me. You should become a lawyer. But, you know, it wasn't so much about arguing, but I think that I was always attracted to the law because justice, fairness has always been very important to me.
Yeah.
And so I was initially drawn to the law and the practice of law because that's important to me.
Yeah.
But you learn very quickly that our legal system, as good as it is not perfect. Justice isn't necessarily accessible to everyone. Sometimes it takes a lot of money to get through the legal system and to obtain your rights or what's rightfully yours.
Right.
And then in various situations, for instance, in family law situations, very often a mother has stepped back from her career to take care of her kids.
That's right.
And if things go sideways, she may not be able to fight for what she needs for herself and her kids. And so what happened is initially in a roundabout way, I came to the law, and then I realized that it just didn't feel satisfying to me. It didn't feel satisfying to me that outcomes weren't always ideal, that things took a long time, that things took a lot of money.
Right.
And again, because of my inclination towards two things. One, improving outcomes, and two, bringing parties together. Very often in litigation, what happens is two parties come to a dispute and they become more and more entrenched as time goes by, and they spend more and more resources to obtain maybe a less than ideal outcome. But essentially why I moved more towards what's called alternate dispute resolution and arbitration and mediation is because through that practice, you try to bring two parties together. So definitely mediation, you try to bring two parties together. And arbitration is more geared towards getting to an outcome faster where both people choose the arbitrator.
Okay, so that's a very interesting field that you got into, because law has many different fields, right? I want to talk a little bit about that, but let's take a very short commercial break and come back, get the program paid for.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Gulnaaz is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Gulnaaz Lalji is our Woman in Focus today. Gulnaaz, you talk about getting into the legal field. It's a huge field, Many people go to court. Do you have to go to court?
No.
No.
So this is actually the thing that I disliked about the practice of law. What I'm talking about is litigation.
Yes.
So in litigation, typically parties become very polarized.
Right.
They've arrived at a point where they cannot resolve the conflict themselves.
Right.
And they decide that rather than settling out of court, they will go to court because they're so entrenched in their positions that there doesn't seem to be a pathway forward.
No.
And that was the side of law that I felt was just unsavory for me.
Yeah.
I think it's much more, for me, it's much more attractive to be a part of something which involves bringing parties together. Because
and have a win-win situation for both of them, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Rather than both parties expending huge amounts of resources to go to court and spending a lot of time and years go by, and imagine the emotional drain, like whether you're dealing with couples, families, estates, even in business disputes. People often enter a business arrangement with somebody else because they feel an alignment. And then when things go sideways, it's just really unfortunate the way things kind of evolve. And so with something like mediation, the idea is to bring the two parties together and to get them to settle at a point that makes sense for both of them.
For both of them.
And likewise with arbitration, what happens is very often in business arrangements or even in other arrangements, two parties will agree at the outset when they enter a relationship, business or otherwise, that if we get into a dispute, we will both jointly select an arbitrator, and we will agree to their decision irrespective of what it is. So it's a way to sort of shortcut the legal process and also to ensure that people spend less money on the court system. And as you know, our courts are really backed up, and so it's good on all sides.
So does it usually, this field, is it usually for businesses, or does family law also get into it too?
Absolutely. So in British Columbia, we definitely have our own set of rules for family law disputes. And in fact, that's an area which I think is really up and coming, in the sense that, as you can imagine, we often have situations where a couple, after having children particularly, will decide that it's just not working out. And in that situation, you know, when both parties become too entrenched and when things become too acrimonious, the impact is not just felt by the couple, it's felt by the children as well. And now what we're moving more and more towards is a situation where a couple will have, you know, not a judge to tell them what to do,
Yes.
but someone else who can help them get onto the same page. And again, it reduces the acrimony, it gets to faster outcomes, it reduces the amount of money you spend on going to court, and
Right.
it's just a better situation overall, I think.
Well, you know, that part of the legal profession has come after a long time, and I think people that need this most are the women.
I would agree with you.
Don't you think so?
Absolutely, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think that as a community and as a society, we here in particular, you know, Vancouver, BC, Canada, we've really made strides of change. If I think about the situation that we had here, let's say 30 years ago, for instance, if I think of my mother's generation,
Right.
and if I think of marriages that came undone during my mother's generation,
Right.
there were very few choices for women, unless
yeah.
a woman, and in the rare circumstance where a woman
Right.
worked, had access to capital, whatever. Otherwise, you had no choices.
No.
And so definitely I think that for women, this is a very good thing. You don't get punished for
No.
dedicating your time to raising your children and supporting your husband.
Right.
On the contrary, you're getting a bit of support to figure this out in a way that makes sense for everyone.
So do you have to keep up with the law, because the law
Yeah.
also gets polished and changed,
Absolutely.
and so
Absolutely.
the studying goes on forever?
You know, I think that, so here's my perspective on that. I think in any field, and
Yes.
even if you're not a working person, I think it's important to continue to keep your mind fresh and to stay on top of new
Yes.
developments. Absolutely, in law, absolutely. The law grows and evolves and changes over time. I even had an opportunity to spend some time in Ottawa, and that's where laws are made here, and
Yes.
that was really exciting and
Was
really
it?
fun. Absolutely, because you know when you're there, you're literally drafting laws or helping others
Wow.
draft laws. So that's really exciting.
How long did you stay there for?
Oh gosh, on and off. I mean, I think I spent time there from 2010 to just before COVID, on and off. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and you know, it's amazing being in our country's capital. It's amazing meeting and learning from people who are making the laws of the country. We even have, you know, people in our own community who are there, as you know, and it's wonderful. I mean, I can't reference that without
Yes.
saying as well that, you know, one thing you and I have talked about is the importance of giving back, and also the importance of helping women younger
Yes.
than us kind of come up through the ranks. And, you know, part of the reason I feel so strongly about that is after my dad passed away when I was about 16, my mother was a single mother.
Right.
And so the importance of having a strong female figure is very important, I think, in your life. But in addition to my mother, I think that I have been so fortunate that there have been other women in my life who have, you know, had my back, who have trained me, who have mentored me, people you and I both know. And so I think that, you know, I was given certain opportunities, I was given certain training, and so it's just important to always keep that in mind as you're moving through life.
I want to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that. You
Okay.
know, you giving back to the community. You in your free time, I don't know if you get free time after all
Absolutely.
this, because you know, arbitration and mediation.
Have to, otherwise you can't stay balanced.
You can, that's
Yeah.
true. Let's take a short commercial break and come back and talk about that. Gulnaaz is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Our Woman in Focus today is Gulnaaz Lalji. Now, in your profession, you must have seen many women who find it very difficult to have a balance, right? If you're an ambitious woman, you want to be a career woman, then you have to give up something unless you find a partner who is equally supportive. That is, I think, the biggest issue that our young South Asian women find. Do you feel that?
Of course, you know, many things fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
I think that's universal. In terms of relationships, you know, I think that it's really important to always make time for things outside of your work, because even just from a health perspective, I think that working hard is great and being successful is great, but if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
No.
If you don't have balance and you don't have time to spend with your loved ones, you know, that's not ideal. So I would say that even in my own path, the one thing, to be honest, that has been a saving grace for me has been the practice of yoga. And that, of course, has centuries-old history in our community. And, you know, again, going back to women mentors, I've been blessed to have someone who has trained me in yoga for 15 years. You know, Anisha Kurji.
Oh, wow.
And she, you know, she is incredible.
Amazing woman.
Amazing woman, incredible. I mean, for me and for my practice of yoga, that was where I found my balance.
Her guru and my guru just recently passed away. And it was very sad to see him go away. He was an amazing guy. And Anisha helped a lot for his work that he was doing in Allahabad. Guruji was very fond of Anisha as well. Very fond of Anisha. And so Anisha, I think, has balanced her life beautifully, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And helped you guys out there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, again, for every individual, we have to find our own thing, that special thing where no matter what's happening around you, you can throw yourself into that thing. I mean, for some of us, it's yoga. For others, it is fishing. For others, it's golf. You know, everybody has their thing. But I think that everybody has to find that thing that no matter what is happening in the world around them, they can feel grounded, feel centered, feel balanced, and just feel whole. And for me, in fact, Anisha's daughter Sabiha and I grew up together. We went to school together, and so it was actually Sabiha who initially told me, you know, Gulnaaz, why don't you try yoga? Because again, going back to women who, you know, work very hard, and you know, you find yourself always in knots and tents, and you know, and so Sabiha said, you know, Gulnaaz, try yoga. It will help you with everything. And I began with her and with her mom, and then I just continued with her mom for 15 years.
Whatever problem that you are facing with meditation and yoga, you are in a place where it is all clear then for you.
Absolutely. It's about turning off the background noise and just listening to your own inner voice.
Isn't that just beautiful?
Yeah.
And I don't know why Indians have stopped you know, practicing yoga. It was a part of our life forever. I guess we want to be too westernized. I won't go there.
You know, but what's really lovely, and I'm going to share an anecdote with you. Is June 21st is World Yoga Day.
That's right.
And you know, even when I was in Ottawa, they would have yoga on the hill. So on Parliament Hill, they would have a bunch of people practicing yoga on their mats. You know, in the middle of summer, it was incredible. So I think that, you know, it's important for all cultures. I mean, especially ours, to hold on to the things that have helped us through the centuries. Whether it's, you know, whether it's vegetarianism, whether it's yoga. There are so many things from our ancestors that are so helpful for us. And then to bring to that what we learn here that is so helpful as well. Because, you know, I kind of think of myself as a bit of like just a hybrid, right? I've got my Eastern side to me, and then I've got the Western side. And I'm grateful for both, you know. And my dad wanted me to pick up as much of the Western side as I could. And, you know, my mom, as you know, is very Eastern. And so I love both influences. So
you mentioned that apart from mom, you had two mentors in your life, and you mentioned Anisha, and the second one you and I both know. The whole world knows, I think.
Of course. So Senator Mubina Jaffer, she's been an incredible mentor to me. You know,
she's an amazing woman.
So lucky, you know, as someone within our community, someone from the same faith-based group, the same, you know, ethnic community, the same exodus from East Africa. And she also, as you know, has, you know, she first studied law, and then she went on to work in politics, and now, of course, she's a senator. And you know, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's so important for young women to have these sorts of role models, mentors. They say if you can't see it, you can't be it, and it's true. It's so true. So I'm grateful for her, contribution to my life. I'm grateful to all of these women, including my mother, who, if it weren't for my mother is, a woman of tremendous grit and resilience. As you know, she became a widow at 39, and she had 3 children under 16 at that time.
That's right.
And she was not prepared to be a single parent. But my mother is very adaptive. She's very resilient. And I think around the time that you and her began spending more time together, she was running her own business.
Yes.
And she did that successfully for 20 years.
And I remember going to her store and her talking about, oh, my Gulnaaz has done this now, and she's passed this, now she's a lawyer. It was just amazing how proud she always was, and she is, of what you have accomplished and what you're doing. And I think young women in our community look up to women like you to say, I want to go that path, In the legal profession, there are very few women that used to go into the legal profession, but now the uptake is there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's almost as though once you have a critical mass, it becomes more acceptable for people to choose certain career options. Yeah.
Well, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Oh, my goodness. It's interesting that you asked that question, because I think for many people, as difficult as the last year or so has been with COVID-19 and lockdowns and travel bans and tremendous losses in many of our families, I think that the crisis of the pandemic of the last year or so has been an opportunity for many of us to reflect on really what's important at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I think it's important to have a thriving career. It's important to have, a thriving business if you have a business. But I think it's also important to have strong relationships with your loved ones, to have quality time with your loved ones, and to do as much for our own health and well-being as we can. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I think we really,
need to do that.
Yeah.
Lovely. All the more power to you, my dear.
Thank you.
Thank you for being
having
our
me.
Woman in Focus today.
Thank you.
Gulnaaz has been our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back.